and to open it. Um, and then in the final steps, it's very delicate pressure. But in the early parts, you have to put quite a bit of pressure. So you want to start small and work your way up. So you saw how I did this. I cut this thick slice and then cut it into quarters. This is what you're going to need, this much clay, to do your 4 plates or your 4 bowls or whatever. All right? So I'm going to keep these on here and wrap it. And remember, when you use up your 2 bags of clay, then you can use recycled clay. All right, so you want to have a bowl of water here, close by.
It's not on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Right in front of your stool.
So I'm just dampening. You don't want to get too much water on the bat when you throw the piece of clay down. You want the piece of clay to be stuck, right? You don't want it to come off, again, at the wrong time. So sometimes moistening the bat a little bit, but you get too much water, then it won't stick. So just barely moistening it, and then slap it down so that it's not going to come off, and that it's approximately in the center. And then set the speed so that it's like a medium speed, like that. So you can see as it's turning around, it's kind of in the center, but it's not perfectly centered. All right, well, we want to get it perfectly centered before we try to make something out of it. So putting both hands on it and holding firm and letting go slowly, we can center it, just like that. Okay, so it's a matter of, so this is, where's one of those sheets? So this is step 1. So center the ball of clay with the right hand on top and the left hand on the side. So that's what I'm doing here. So starting with the left hand, the left elbow is tucked into my stomach or into the pocket of my hip, and the heel of my hand is pressing on the clay. My fingers are not involved, and my arm is pointing to the center of the wheel here. So out like this, pulling in like that takes a lot of muscle strength coming in like that, right? And if I'm over like this, then I'm bending, I'm hyperextending my wrist, and I'm not very strong like that. But with my base of my palm there, I'm pushing with my body against the clay. That's all. I've got way more force than I need, like this. And just that by itself pushes the clay in. It gets skinnier and taller, right? At the same time, I've got my right hand on top, palm down on top, okay? My arm is straight. And as I lean forward, my body is pushing on my arm and pushing down on the clay, making it go shorter and wider, going in the opposite direction of what the left hand is doing, right? So when I do those 2 things together, I'm just leaning forward and downward, boom, it's centered, okay? So if you find yourself struggling with it, it's not centering, then you want to get your hands and your arm and your body in the right position. It's just body mechanics here, okay? Everybody here is more than enough strength to do this. You're using your body to apply the force. Now, letting go slowly is important, because if you're putting the pressure on it and you let go quickly, it's going to go off center like that. You know, the pressure is being applied just here and here, you know, or here and here. And so the clay's coming around, pressure, no pressure, pressure, no pressure. So you've got to relax your pressure to give it time to adjust to the change in pressure, or else it's going to be off, okay? If you let go too quick. All right, and the water is a lubricant so that it doesn't stick to you. You'll get a little bit of slip on your hands like I am, but just every once in a while you want to just drip a little bit more water on there for this part, because you're putting so much pressure, so much friction on there. All right, so that's centering, and when it looks like it's standing still, it's centered. You can move on. All right, if it's got a little bit of a side-to-side wobble like that, then your left arm's not strong enough, not steady enough. Okay, means your elbow's out here. Some people put their elbow on their leg, you know, and they're just bouncing back and forth. The clay's pushing you around. But if you tuck it into your stomach, then that's all it takes to take care of that. Or if it's doing something like that, it's the top. Usually it's not the top. People don't have trouble holding their hand steady. It's the left hand that causes the most trouble. All right, so that's step one. Step two is to open the ball with the right palm on top, pressing down, and you support the right hand with the left palm. So you go from this position to center to this position for opening. So the left hand is just a platform to brace your fingertips, your right hand, as you put your wrist bone in your corner of your right palm. There's a knob of bone, and that's your tool for doing this, for opening, for pushing down in the center like that. Okay? So this is where it deviates from the techniques that you see everybody else do, like on YouTube. They'll use their thumbs to go down in there, or their fingers to drill down in there. Okay? But this is way better for a number of reasons. Number one is it's less stress on the joints and ligaments in your hand. You know, when you're drilling down through that clay and spreading out with your fingers, that's putting a lot of stress. And a lot of potters develop carpal tunnel syndrome because of doing this over and over again with their fingers or their thumbs. Also, then you have the potential of when the piece dries, of a little crack forming in the bottom that's in the shape of an S. It's called an S crack. And that happens from the clay particles being kind of pulled apart that are in the bottom of the piece, kind of pulled apart, you know, as it's spinning, and it creates this kind of spiral shaped crack in the bottom. But by using your palm to press down in there to open it, you're compressing those particles tighter together, and it erases the memory of that spiral that happens when you just drill down and open it up. All right, so we push down in the center, and you see it's lower in the center than up here. So at this point, I want to see how thick it is there. I don't want it to be too thick or too thin. Find out at the end that I didn't make it the right thickness. So right here, I poke a needle in there all the way through, and then grab the needle on the clay and pull it out to get a measurement of that thickness. Okay? And the thickness we want of these pieces to be is about the same as what we've been making all our pieces so far. Under ½ an inch, 3/8 to 1/4 of an inch. You know, that would be too thin. Okay? There's not enough there. That thin. All right? And that would be too thick. Right? So we want it somewhere in between. We want it to be, you know, like from there to there. From there to there. Okay, in that thickness range.
If it is too thick, do you just do this again with like...
Just press just a little bit more. You fine tune it, exactly. All right? And if, let's say you go too far, you're pressing, and you go, oh, well, there's clay there. But it's not enough. All right? Well, if I left it like that, when I run the wire under it to cut it loose, it would just cut the bottom out of it, because the wire takes out a little bit of clay on the bottom. So it's too thin. What do? I just take a little pinch of clay and fill that in, that little depression that I've made in the middle, where it's just thin in the middle. The rest of this is thick. So doing it this way gives you control over the thickness. All right, so now I have the thickness I need, like that. Now I'm opening. Okay, so that was number 2 was just pushing down. Number 3 was checking the center thickness. Number 4 is to level the rest of this, to make it all level with that center thickness, by moving the right palm towards my body like this. So I'm using the left hand for support, and that wrist bone is in the middle. And I come back and spread it out like that. Yes, that's right, Hannah. slow and steady. And I'm rotating, I'm pivoting on my fingertips so that the pressure is starting here in the center, and then the edge of my palm is sliding past and helping to smooth it out. If you just go like this, you'll create a spiral groove in the center, okay? Which could be nice, but if you want it to be flat, then use the edge of your palm as a smoothing tool, like that. And then using your fingertips to run over the radius of the circle, you can tell if it's any highs or lows to it. And if it's, and you can, so you want to even it out, make it flat and level. And so now we're at step 5, push the edge of clay with left thumb to raise the rim. So left thumb, and my other hand, either you can use your fingertip or your thumb, is helping to push in to make the edge stand up. All right, so you just go in until you've got an edge up to an inch tall. All right, just like that. So the clay just piles up and then starts going upwards. Now we want to make sure that this edge is really even centered, and this one's good, but often it won't be so even. Often it will be very uneven when you get to this point. And so we want to straighten this out before we go any further. So what we do is that we put a little pressure downward with the sponge. So the sponge is in the right hand. My finger's on top of the sponge and pushing down on the rim. And that's making it get shorter and fatter. And at the same time, my left hand, my thumb and finger are controlling the thickness, putting a little counter pressure to what the sponge is doing, all right? So this is even, it's really messed up, okay? I ripped part of it out, it's all uneven. This is how you fix it, all right? Left hand is just there, the thumb and finger are just riding there, not squeezing. My right hand is up against it, so they're kind of bracing each other. And then starting pressure downward with the sponge. And as you push down, it's starting to fatten up. And as it gets like half an inch thick, now I can tighten up with my left hand as I maintain that downward pressure with the sponge, and it'll straighten out. It'll fill in all those empty places and straighten out. So that's a very important thing to learn to do, because it happens a lot that you get to that point where there's unevenness, right?
You make it look so easy, like it won't happen.
It will happen. It will happen. It will just follow these steps and
You're
repeat.
like, oh wow, that is perfect. I'm like,
So that was step 6. Recenter the rim with right forefinger on top, pressing down on top of the sponge. The sponge is there to lubricate it, okay, to apply water to help lubricate it, while the left thumb and finger are gently squeezing, all right? So that's this right here. Step 7 is equalize the thickness of the plate wall with left thumb and finger. So remembering how thick the bottom is, all right? I want the walls to be the same thickness. When this is all done, I want it to be all the same thickness. So right now the wall at the top is a little bit thicker than I want it to be. And at the bottom, it's way thicker. At the bottom, it's like that thick, okay? Between out here and in here, all right? So that's a lot of clay. So I want to equalize this with my left thumb on the outside, pushing in towards my fingertip on the inside. All right, so that just made it thinner at the very bottom, also made it taller, right? And now I keep my hands at that distance apart and bring them up. And it's pushing all that clay in and making it taller still, all right? This is how we bring things up, is starting pressure at the bottom, pushing in against the finger or hand on the inside, and then bringing it up and repeating until we have an even thickness from top to bottom. So I can use my thumb and finger like calipers to measure the thickness. By running them up and down, I can tell if it's thicker or thinner than the very top, which is the right thickness now when I compare it again to to the bottom thickness. All right, it's exactly the same thickness in the bottom and the rim, and when I compare, I can tell that it's the same thickness all the way down. And if it gets unsteady from doing that, then you use the sponge on top and your left hand holding to compress and get it even again. Always do that as necessary to keep it even. Now is number 8, step 8 is to trim the base. So you see how the clay at the bottom is flaring out. I want to trim that off. So I use this rib. So I'm holding it with the point up, and the point is pointing at me. Here on the right side is pointing at me, and I slide it in to trim that clay off and to give a neat bottom edge. All right? Now, if I wanted a little dish, a little cat bowl or single serving quiche or flan or something, then this is fine. Done. But if we want it to be a plate with a low rim, then just drop the rim down, a little pressure from the inside, spread it out. This is the delicate part, okay? Because it's very easy to get it out of balance if you're not steady with your pressure at this part. All right? So this is where you want the speed to be going a little slower. So you can also use your sponge on the inside. Push with the sponge to give a different shape of a plate, like that. Okay? So pressure from the inside moves the clay out. Pressure from the outside, move it back in. But it's slow and steady movements. Okay? Because you got to give time for the whole thing to have that pressure to it. So being steady is the key to the whole thing. So the whole time, my elbows are close to my body. I'm never like this because I'm not steady when I'm like this. My elbows are close to my body, and every chance I get, I'll have my hands touching so that my touch is steady. Okay, very important. And then if you've got water and slip inside, you want to hold a sponge there to pick that up, to smooth it off. Give a little roundness to the edge, and then we're done. So that was trim base. Number 9, shape the rim. That was however you want to make it look like a plate. Number 10, clean with a sponge. Number 11, wire it off. So you hold the wire. So the wire is longer than we need to cut these things off. So you need to wrap it around one hand so you can hold it real tight as you pass it underneath. You don't want to hold it loose to go underneath because that slack will rise up and cut the bottom out of it. So hold it tight with your thumbs down. And I recommend that starting close to you and pushing away is better than starting away and pulling towards you, because in pulling towards you, you tend to lift and you might cut the bottom unevenly that way. But if you're pushing down, then it tends to be even all the way. So then if we're still working, we're going to make more, then we just lift the bat, set the piece outside, let it start drying, and then the end of class, then we want to transfer all the pieces off the bats onto boards to dry. And then the bats get cleaned and put back on the rack by the end of the sink, so the next class can use them.
And put your initials on the back.
And put your initials on the bat, that's right, so that you can identify your pieces from everybody else's out there, and they don't get confused. Now, when you go to transfer them, you may have to cut it again, but you start on the far side, and you walk your fingers underneath to pick it up, and then set it down. Walk your fingers out from underneath, and you may have to adjust it a little bit to make it round again. But if it's stiffened up a little bit, it'll be less floppy, and you won't lose the shape. So this is, let's see how I did with thickness. All right, so that's the kind of evenness of thickness that we want to end up with. So in the finished plate will have a balance to it. It won't be bottom heavy because it's thicker in the bottom and thinner in the top. We don't want to do this, pinch the top up real thin. It's easy to do that. But if you do that, then it's going to feel heavy in the bottom, not balanced, right? And everything that we have, think about it. When you pick up plastic bottle, aluminum can, an apple, they have a balance to them, even distribution of material, right? So that's what we expect when we pick something up, that it has a balance to it. We don't want to go, oh man, that's weird. Feels a little heavy in the bottom, right? It's also good because, we have those, extreme difference in thickness from one part to another, then it could potentially crack because of uneven shrinkage. It could crack in the firing because of uneven thickness. Same thing. So I want you to pay attention, and all of these pieces you're going to make, I want you to focus on attempting to make them an even thickness, because I want you to be aware of it. All right. When you get to Ceramics 2, you'll learn how to make things that you have to leave extra thickness when you throw it to support a certain shape, but then it's trimmed off when the piece is leather hard, right? So that's another set of skills that we'll wait until Ceramics 2 to get to. Christian.
So what about the part of the plate at the bottom where it's like a little up? And
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You learn to do when you trim away the excess to leave that rim, that foot ring. Yeah, so that's, you learn how to do that if you're going to make a shape that's like this. If you wanted to make a bowl or something that's a curve.
So mean.
I'm gonna just take sound of the noises people make when you do that, because it just never ceases to. It never ceases to amaze me when you do it, but it's always interesting to hear what everybody says.
Yeah. So here's a bowl that I wanted to have, a perfect curve inside. All right. I can't throw it.
Nice, yeah.
I can't throw it that way on the outside.
Yeah.
Right. So I've got to leave this thickness that when it's leather hard, I cut this excess off when it's leather hard, and trim out a little bit on the inside, to have the perfect cross section like that, where the foot ring is here and here. Okay, so that's what you learn in Ceramics 2.
Oh.
Okay, we don't want to get into that yet.
No.
Now notice what I'm doing right here. So I'm reusing the same piece of clay a couple of times, and I'm doing it by wedging it now. So I'm mixing the clay with itself, tearing it in half and stacking the halves on top of each other, right? So shearing it off across my palm and then stacking the halves. And you do that about 20 times, and that thoroughly mixes the water content throughout. So then it can be reused. You can do that a couple of times before the clay gets too soft, and then you've got to let it dry out before you can reuse it. Yes, sir?
Is there a time when you need to use the actual wedging area then?
Yes, like if you're wedging a larger piece of clay,
Okay.
then the wires on the table are out there. Out there will, you throw the piece of clay down on the wire and it cuts it in half. If you're doing like 10 pounds of clay,
Oh,
then
okay.
you would use that to cut it in half and then stack the halves and cut it in half and stack it as you repeat it.
Oh.
So it's doing the same as this.
Oh, thank you.
But for a small piece of clay, you just do it with your hands.
I was doing with that size clay out there on that. I was like, this feels very over
Overkill.
the top. But yeah.
Yes, that's right. All right, so now this bat, because so this clay here, I don't have to clean this off. If I had it really wet and goopy on here, the clay might not stick, but the clay will stick just fine to that. Oh, one other thing. So I always round off the piece of clay before I throw it down. Because if, let's say I threw down this side, these little dents would likely trap air and be little air pockets underneath. and it wouldn't be securely attached, and it wouldn't center well. It would move around. It would be hard to center because the air is moving in there. So always round off the part that's going to hit the bat, and it will expel the air out as it comes down, and then you won't have that problem. It will be secure. All right, so I'm going to run through this again. So left hand on the side, right hand on top. Lean in and down, hold steady. Relax your hands, take your hands away slowly. Then wrist bone on top, right hand wrist bone, push down. You need to use a lot of water when you're doing this because there's a lot of friction, it dries out, and it will grab your hand and pull it off center. So you want to go kind of quickly through that part of pushing down. Measure your thickness, get it just right in the center before you spread it out. Make sure it's level, and then push in with your thumb, make it stand up. Compress the rim with the sponge and squeeze with the left hand, hold, make it even, and then equalize the thickness with your left hand, thumb pushing in. Then trim the base. And then shape the rim. So here I'm using the edge, the flat edge of the rib, gently bending the rim over and down. So it's not just pushing down, straight down, it's bending it out from the inside. Wipe out the water. You can also little designs in there.
That would be mine.
There's the plate. Okay? All right, so let's everybody get on a wheel, and let's get started. And I'll come around and I'll help you remember the steps and go through it.